I'm delighted to say that we are back with our very first opposition view of the 22-23 campaign. It's an old friend of ours, a friend of the show. It's Steve Tudor from the 93-20 Manchester City podcast. Steve, great to have you back with us again. First one of the season. We're obviously used to chatting to fans of top six clubs ahead of the first game of the season. There is obviously a conspiracy, absolutely no doubt about it. From mine and Jonesy's point of view, we're just blessed that this year we get to watch us get thrashed at home and actually go along to a game on the first day of the campaign rather than traipsing all the way up the country to the Etihad to watch us get smashed 6-0. Delighted to have you back. I think the most the thing I'm most excited about ahead of the game, quite honestly, given that I don't hold out much hope of us getting a result, is watching Erling Haaland play in the flesh. Have you managed to do that yet? Or is the sort of feeling the same up at City about seeing how he hits the ground running?
He was very impressive against Bayern for 45 minutes, less impressive at the weekend. I'm loving the tweets that followed the Community Shield game with particularly Liverpool fans saying, oh, he's going to be a flop. I wish I bookmarked him because come October time when he scored he's reached double figures already. Yeah. We do have a problem and we need to adapt to kind of assimilate him into the team. And no question about that. But we also have Pep Guardiola and he knows a fair bit about football. So I don't doubt that this problem will be resolved. But will it be resolved before West Ham? Probably not. So that's a bonus for you guys. And also our performance at the weekend. You know, we didn't look fully fit. And I'm sure we'll get to that shortly. But as regards to Haaland, I wasn't bothered at all about his missed chances. A player like him, he's going to miss chances. He's going to score infinitely more than he misses. What did concern me was how isolated he was, how there was a few kind of bad glances between him and Kevin De Bruyne because they weren't on the same wavelength. These things will all be resolved in due course, but like I say, they won't be immediately resolved.
That kind of builds into my next question, Steve, that City have lost at least two key players. Zinchenko was a very good squad player. 3 players gone, and then you've got the performance against Liverpool at the weekend. Do you think that kind of losing those key players and then having brought in a world-class striker like Haaland, there's an element of kind of transitional period in terms of where City are at the moment, because it's not as perfect as many people were expecting when the Haaland announcement in particular was made.
Yeah, it's quite a seismic difference, really, that he makes to the team in terms of how we go about, how we're set up, how we play. To go from a false 9 for 2 years to this, quintessential number 9, the most feared number 9 in world football, then, it couldn't be more kind of stark of a difference. That is going to take a great deal of time. And you will see individual performances such as, for example, against Bayern Munich, Jack Grealish struck up an immediate understanding with Haaland. That wasn't in evidence at the weekend. So you will see these games where it all clicks, but consistently, no, I don't think so. Not until we're at least 6 months into the season. Talking about him as an individual, he'll score goals. Of course he will. But as regards to how we play as a team and whether it'll be as cohesive as it's been, in the last 2 years, that's going to take time. And it's always going to be the case. And losing players like Sterling and Jesus, these players understood instinctively what Pep Guardiola wants. I mean, it's in their DNA, They don't have to think about it. They don't need that half second of thought of, oh, I should be running in that direction right now. They just did it. It's robotic. And that does take a while. We saw it last season with Grealish. So I can't see why that wouldn't be the case with Haaland. I'm not concerned at this point. I am concerned about the weekend. I'm concerned about West Ham.
You do always say that, though, Steve. And it's starting to get insulting now. It's just offensive.
Last season, mate. I mean, come on, you scared the life out of us last season. 2-0 up. It was, So I was kind of right there. I knew that was going to be a hard game, and as it proved to be. And we lost at home to Spurs last season on the opening day, and City fans went away from that loss just shrugging their shoulders. It was a case of, right, well, they were basically 20% fitter than we were. And we've had 2 games in pre-season. We've had a Community Shield. We're not there yet. You're not going to see peak Manchester City at the weekend. Not a chance. So whether you capitalise on
She'll
that,
only
that's
lose
down to
3,
you.
Jonesy. Steve, it's just intriguing. Just before we move on, I don't dwell on it too long, but you're talking about the style of play and all that sort of thing there. I read some quotes from Pep Guardiola not too long ago, within a week maybe, saying to the club website, saying we're not going to change the way we play to accommodate these new signings. We want to get the best out of them, of course. We want the best versions of them, but ultimately, we're still going to be the same, playing the same way. Is that going to mean high pressing from Haaland? Because, like you said, with the false nine, there's an inevitable shift, isn't there? In how there will be a difference, no matter what Pep says. There will be one, but perhaps if it goes back to the days of when you had Aguero up top, what huge shoes to fill they are. I think I heard Phil Foden saying that the two are very similar the other day. Find that a little bit confusing. I guess he means with their sort of sharp finishing as opposed to their actual style of play and movement. But is Haaland going to be expected to be harrying people up the pitch and high pressing along with your wide players? Or I was just surprised to hear that from Pep, because it's like, well, there's going to be a shift of sorts, but I don't know unless he's got completely different ideas.
No, I think you'll see pressing from Haaland. You can't be in a City team without pressing. The degree of pressing, well, that's kind of open to debate, really, and we'll find that out in due course. We saw with Aguero, he increased with his work rate as the months went on, as he played under Pep Guardiola, and he did become a different type of striker. I expect to see the same from Haaland as opposed to the player he was at Dortmund. But Dortmund aren't shy in pressing either. He puts the work rate in. The key difference for me, and it's a positive from a City perspective, is that we will revert back to overlapping fullbacks. It's a positive in the sense that we've done it before to great effect. We're going to have overlapping fullbacks if we've got Erling Haaland. All this kind of inverted Cancelo playing kind of as a number 10. We'll see far less of that, I think, and we'll see Cancelo and we'll see Walker kind of overlap, which is something I'd like to see anyway. We'll see plenty more crosses coming in from wide areas, and so it's pretty straightforward. The differences we'll see, and it's a style that we used to do so well kind of 3 years ago. So that's what I'm expecting anyway.
Jonesy, I hope you don't mind me interrupting ahead of what I'm sure was an outstanding question. Steve, I've just got to ask you one thing, and if I'm nicking yours here, Jonesy, I'm a little bit sorry, but it's a belter. I absolutely love Raheem Sterling. I think he's one of the best English footballers of our generation by a mile. I've always liked him. I think he's always been underrated, especially the football he's played at Man City. He's like the first name I put on an England team sheet, even now. I know people, I still don't really understand lots of the criticism of him. His move to Chelsea, were you disappointed? Am I completely wacko with my sort of feelings towards him then? I genuinely was really surprised to see him go. I appreciate his playing time had reduced somewhat, but I was surprised to see it go. And it just feels to me like that's a genuinely brilliant signing for Chelsea and to strengthen the team.
I was surprised and I wasn't particularly disappointed. He's been somewhat kind of underwhelming the last 2 years by his standards, probably as a result of the fact that we're playing with a false nine. He's never really took to that as well as the other kind of attackers have. Having said that, this season we've got Haaland. He would have thrived alongside Haaland, creating chances for him. So that was kind of surprising. I was really surprised that City sold him to a rival in Chelsea. I'm really surprised that he wanted to go to Chelsea, a club where some of the fan base has racially abused him in the past.
True, yeah.
And the fact that he's now joining a club which has got pretty much, kind of 8 or 9 rivals for that front three as the same as City. So nothing really changes from that regard. And also, as well, he's been accused in the past of being a money grabber when he left Liverpool for City. If he'd stayed at City, in January, he'd have been a free agent, essentially, and he could have named his price. So he's kind of, talked himself out of even more of a fortune, is what he's no doubt got. So none of it really makes sense, apart from Chelsea's perspective, signing him because he's a fantastic player, and him leaving City. There's logic to that. To be fair, he hasn't really been peak Raheem now for some time, and there's rumours of a fallout with Pep as well, which probably has played a part.
Steve, earlier on, I think it was Will mentioned Aguero and the big shoes that have got to be filled. Obviously, Haaland's coming to be the main man up front. What are your thoughts on Alvarez, though? Because he came off the bench at the weekend, got his goal after what felt like about half-hour VAR check. Got the goal. He looked really, really impressive. And he's the one that really reminds me of Sergio Aguero when he first came out of the Premier League. Is that? Do you think he's got what it takes to potentially get to there or thereabouts in terms of Aguero's level?
I think in due course there'll be increasing pressure on Pep to play him centrally because his goal scoring form in South America. I'm not a South American expert, I don't watch every River Plate game. I see the highlights when we were linked to him, and then when we signed him, and he just looks a phenomenal talent. He has played out wide, and he does play out wide, and he's effective out there, as we saw, in pre-season against Liverpool. As a goal scorer, as an Aguero type, and you have to play him central. But of course, we've got Haaland, so will he just be an understudy to Haaland? The really interesting thing for me is an hour before kickoff against West Ham, I'm going to go on Twitter, I'm going to see the lineup, and the first thing I'm going to see, I'd expect to see Haaland's name there, to see with two other names, because Jack Grealish disappointed against Liverpool, Mahrez disappointed against Liverpool. Mahrez also happened to miss, a crucial penalty against you guys last season. I would love to see Alvarez start with Foden, because when they came on, City looked far better at the weekend. They looked fresher and fitter, and so there's a possibility that we'll see Alvarez starting with Haaland, and yeah, that is exciting, really. I mean, the lad is he's just the best of both worlds. He's got all the tricks and the skills and the pace, and the goal scoring, as I said, is just off the charts. And he's got those kind of goal scoring instincts, but he works really hard and he's passionate as well. And he very much looks like the kind of player that you could very quickly fall in love with.
Steve, I'm not really sure actually what vibes I'm getting from you at the moment. So no, as far as whether you're confident about City's season, on one hand, Jonesy mentions transitional, and I think that's sort of when you're at the level City are at, there isn't room for transition, is there? When you're talking the fine margins that Liverpool, or like between yourselves and Liverpool in the title last year and in the seasons before, there isn't really margin for a couple of transitional defeats like there may be at West Ham or anyone out of that top two, really. There isn't really room for any transitional defeats, or that's your season done. Are you... Because I don't... Liverpool don't really sort of strike too much fear into me that they're going to be sensationally better than last season. I would say weaker, if anything, whereas City have lost some big names there, may have stayed the same, perhaps. But what are your thoughts, sort of on bigger picture wise, title race wise, yourselves compared to Liverpool? Are you confident that it's yours again, or do you sort of think this might be the year when you have to have a year off?
No, I've got to admit, I am confident we're going to win the league again. I hate saying that because it sounds a bit United, but I am. So I do believe there'll be initial struggles. I do believe at Liverpool we won't see anything like the kind of points haul that we've seen from both clubs this season. The fact that there's a big World Cup sandwiched in between both, in the middle of the season, that's going to really affect things. So I don't think any club's going to reach kind of 85 plus points this year. When I say about us transitioning, I expect it to be resolved fairly quickly.
Yeah, a 10-minute transition. Man City may concede to West Ham in the first 10 minutes, and then it's transition over and you win 5-1.
No. What I'm saying is that I think after about 3 or 4 games, if things a bit better understanding between De Bruyne and Haaland, for example, if City are playing at 7 out of 10, we're still good enough to beat, Southampton, other like, Leeds, whoever it may be.
Say West Ham. You can say it.
No. Top 6, mate. Not a chance. I'm not feeling confident at weekend. I'm putting a bet on West Ham to win at the weekend, and that's the honest truth. But after the first few weeks, I expect this to pick up. So basically, how I expect our season to go is we're going to lose to West Ham on Saturday, on the weekend. We are going to maybe pick up a couple of draws in the first 6 games. There's going to be lots of kind of hysterical articles about how Haaland's a flop and how City have lost it, and Pep Guardiola is a bald fraud. And then come October or November, we'll be about 6 or 7 points clear of the Premier League. And there'll be all these other articles saying how we're making the Premier League uncompetitive. And it's not fair because we've got Haaland, who's the best striker in the world. So there's going to be those two extremes in the period of about 4 months is my estimation.
Steve, I'm interested to hear how you think the World Cup is going to affect Man City. Because obviously you're going to have more players than most at the tournament. I think it's a tournament, and the timing of it is going to affect pretty much every club that's playing in a European competition as well. Just because you get an extra minimum 6 games, in West Ham's case, potentially 8 if we get through the qualifiers. So you're going to have the majority of your squad there. How do you think that's going to affect you? You say you still think you're going to win the league, but that's a really big problem to overcome in terms of having potentially 15, 16 players going on to the other side of the world playing in 40-degree heat for 5 weeks.
We'll have more players than most, admittedly, but it's going to impact on every club. I mean, it really is. It's going to have such a seismic impact upon the second half of the season. And we don't have anything like as big a squad as how we're painted, but in terms of quality over quantity, we do have 2 players for each position. We've got some really good kids coming through. Cole Palmer, McAtee. I mean, those 2, if they get game time, they will really impress this season. My concern, really, if I have a concern in that regard, is that Pep is not known for putting youngsters in unless he absolutely has to. Maybe the opening round of the Carabao Cup, that's it. And this is a season where we'll see more and more, which is a good thing for English football, of course, kind of kids coming through and being given a chance, particularly with the 5 sub rule. So I hope that Pep kind of yields in that regard and kind of bends a bit and plays some of the kids. Wilson S. Brand at left back, for example, gives them some minutes. Then we can easily get through the season, barring any real long-term injuries. But no, it's going to impact upon every club. Every club is going to struggle this year. It's going to be a really, really weird season for everyone.
Yeah, I guess Bournemouth and Fulham will probably be okay.
Just enjoy a few weeks off.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? There will be enough teams in the league, I guess, but then the gulf between certainly City and those teams is vast enough anyway. I'm not really sure. I'm still just angry that we've got to endure a World Cup in the winter when we should have just finished enjoying it at the height of one of the hottest summers ever known to man. I appreciate the climate change bit is annoying, but it would have made perfect conditions for to watch a World Cup in the summer. Wouldn't it? I know what you mean. I think I don't know. I think it's just when you go to the Man City and the Liverpool, that sort of level that you guys are at, the quality of the players, the quality of everything at the club is just elite level, isn't it? Including the depth of squad you've got. So you kind of think they're the most professional you can basically be. Not everyone is going to get through the group stages, are they? So they'll be back and training and sort of re-ingratiating themselves. Obviously, all the England players will be out for a while on our run to the final when we inevitably win it. But other than, you're going to get players coming back after those group stage games. I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't see that having too much of a difference really, because all those teams at the top who have even a half chance of threatening City or Liverpool are going to have as many players out there as well, aren't they? So an equal effect across all fronts. Steve, let's talk about this game then. Sunday afternoon at London Stadium. It's a strange one because oddly, both of our teams, when we've gone head-to-head in previous seasons, have enjoyed happier sort of, or found the away ground to be happier hunting grounds. That, of course, until West Ham ended City's 5-year grip, was it, on the Carabao Cup last season? One of the games of the season. It gets forgotten about because we had such an excellent campaign elsewhere, but that was definitely one of my favourites. Dramatic penalty shootout, Said Ben Rama bagging the winner, of course. But in the league, West Ham versus Manchester City at London Stadium has been even more of a frightening fixture than Manchester City versus West Ham at the Etihad. We tend to keep it a little bit closer at the Etihad, perhaps because we feel we've got the freedom or a pass to just put 11 men behind the ball because there's only 3,000 people in the corner shouting and booing at that rather than 60,000. What's your sort of your general thoughts on how the game's going to play out style-wise on the weekend? And I guess, like you said, that will depend largely on Pep's selection.
It'll depend largely on that, and for me, fitness. It comes down to fitness. I don't know how good a pre-season you guys have had or otherwise. Have you looked quite sharp in pre-season?
No, the opposite.
Really? Okay. Oh, well, that is very pertinent then, because I don't fancy City to be, kind of in peak form and kind of looking really sharp. It'll be somewhat of a bitty game as a consequence, particularly if West Ham have also looked a bit off it in the kind of pre-season. And then when you look at that, what typically happens is an individual comes to the fore, doesn't it? It's normally a moment of magic.
Or madness in our case.
Oh, yes, yeah. So that's what it might well come down to. And then it's a case of, you guys have got enough players in your team who can produce moments of magic. So have we. And it's just who produces on the day. I'm not anticipating. We've been treated to some really good games of football with West Ham and City in recent years. In terms of stylistically and results as well as plenty of goals as well. I'm not anticipating a lot of goals, a single goal in it. And as I said, I'm generally putting a bet on West Ham to win.
Steve, we might see the first of Gianluca Scamacca at the weekend. See, he signed. We had a friendly against Lens.
The Italian Haaland.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. The Italian Haaland. Yeah.
Another one. Yeah.
And he's 6'5", I think. Hailed in Italy as like the next best thing. Wonderfully good-looking man.
Really.
6'5". Roberto Mancini has basically said to him, "You're the future number 9 for the Italian national team." He's really, really highly rated in Italy. But it's his height which I'm looking at going, well, that's why David Moyes has bought him, because he loves a set piece. What are City like defending massive strikers and set pieces in particular? Because I'm looking at Scamacca going, right, on his debut, City are off the pace a little bit, not quite 100% fit. This is his moment to become a West Ham legend straight off the bat.
We used to be terrible at set pieces. It used to be a concern every time we conceded one. We have got considerably better in the last two years, I would say, particularly when you look at Laporte. Laporte's just one of those players who, I'm sure there must be a stat out there what shows how many corners he's cleared, but it's going to be high. I'd love to find out what that stat is. It always seems to be Laporte. Unfortunately, he's out at the weekend, so it's a tricky one to come back. I saw quite a lot of Serie A last season, and he did stand out, but he's going to, I guess, because he's 6'5". But I remember distinctly watching the game, thinking, yeah, he's a pretty decent lad. So I've seen a couple of the interviews. He looks like a passionate, sorry to stereotype Italians here, but he does come across as a very typically passionate kind of Italian who's going to really embrace playing for West Ham. So whether that's an immediate impact, only the weekend will tell us. I hope not, obviously, but you guys hope so. But yeah, we do tend to kind of defend well against kind of tall, physically powerful forwards. People like Diaz loves an individual scrap, and he'll be playing at the weekend. So I should imagine that's going to be a real key battle, like Ruben Diaz against Scamacca. So we'll have to see who comes out on top.
Well, Scamacca's the 50th forward player West Ham have signed under David Sullivan.
I think that's not strictly true, though, is it?
No, Jonesy, I promise. I went through the list the other day.
How many youth players?
No. That's what I checked.
Guerrero cannot be on that list.
No, I totally. Yeah, look, I agree. But technically, if you go on Transfermarkt, he's noted as a winger. But I'm with you. I put this argument forward at work when I was tasked with the thing, and I was polite. And to be fair, it's a bit of a loose one, but it's still, to be honest, the ones that are actually like 100% is still like 40 players. So 40, if it's still an absolutely obscene record. But So what my point is, obviously, there's somewhat of a striker curse at West Ham, Steve. And whilst Jonesy, I feel like that was a hopeful question from him. This one might be a little bit more pertinent. What you're going to be like defending against Mikel Antonio for 88 minutes, and then the 2 minutes at the end that Scamacca will get when Moyes throws him on to try and nod in the corner when we're 4-0 down already.
Well, he always causes us problems, doesn't he, Antonio? So he always causes any team problems on his day. So whoever it may be, I put my trust in Ruben Diaz because he is someone who basically he relishes the battle. He loves it. And the players who worry me far more are the Fornals or the kind of technically brilliant players who on a day could just produce something from 25 yards out from nothing. So they're the ones who worry me more, I have to say. But that might come back and bite me.
Fair enough. I'd like to see Pablo Fornals produce a screamer from 25 yards. Jonesy, not something we're too used to, is it?
No, it's not. But what I just love it. What a little player he is.
It's great. Yeah. Look, Steve, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on again. We appreciate your time as always, as we do every single season. Every time we get to talk to you. We finish as always, as we will this season. Give us a score prediction then for the game. West Ham v Manchester City, Sunday afternoon in the late kickoff at London Stadium to open the Premier League campaign. Erling Haaland versus Craig Dawson. Let's just remember that.
I'm going 2-1 West Ham, and for the press to have a meltdown and basically say that it's all imploded at City.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, that sounds good. My pessimism is very much my approach to things, but I know it's what Manchester City. So pessimistic predictions normally just end in West Ham losing by that scoreline. So, Jonesy, what are you saying?
I'm going to start this season as I mean to go on and go with my favourite Desmond. 2-2. Good start to the season. Happy days.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go as optimistic as I can possibly force my normally pessimistic self to be, just so as not to kick the season off by predicting West Ham defeat. And I'm going to go 0-0. Haaland and Scamacca both declared duds after the game. Yeah. West Ham 0, Manchester City 0, London Stadium. I'm pretty sure that'd be about 50-1, but we'll have a look. Look, Steve, from the 9320 podcast there, we appreciate you appreciate your time, mate, coming on.